This is pouring in from China, and I had a deal with President Xi. He was going to give the death penalty to anybody manufacturing fentanyl in China and selling it to the United States.
Tonight, troubling global ties following a massive money laundering bust. Authorities connecting Mexico's infamous Sinaloa drug cartel to an underground Chinese banking group.
Under the glow of parking lot lights in suburban Georgia, a man loading cases of bottled water into the back of a silver SUV looked like anyone else finishing a late grocery run. He wore plain clothes, moved without urgency, and blended perfectly into the quiet rhythm of the evening. What no one in that lot knew was that federal agents had been tracking him for nearly a year. Cameras across multiple counties had logged his movements. Financial analysts had traced structured cash transfers tied to his name. Intercepted communications linked him to coded conversations about shipments, cleaning supplies, and returns. That quiet moment in a grocery store parking lot would become the first visible crack in what Homeland Security later described as one of the largest Chinese-linked synthetic drug and money laundering operations ever uncovered in the southeastern United States, a network valued at more than $400 million. The investigation began quietly in late 2023 when analysts at Homeland Security Investigations and the DEA noticed a troubling pattern emerging across Georgia. Seizures of high-purity methamphetamine and fentanyl were increasing sharply, but without the usual indicators of large-scale border smuggling. There were no dramatic interdictions at ports of entry, no massive truck seizures along the southern border. Instead, drugs were appearing deep inside suburban communities, far from traditional trafficking corridors. At the same time, customs records revealed a surge of shipments labeled as industrial solvents, laboratory cleaners, and chemical intermediates arriving from parts of China, including Shenzhen, Hong Kong, and Shanghai. On paper, the cargo was legitimate, but laboratory analysis told a different story. The compounds inside those shipments were key precursor chemicals used in the production of synthetic opioids and methamphetamine. Georgia's role in the operation was strategic. Atlanta sits at the intersection of major interstate highways, rail corridors, and one of the busiest airports in the world.
Seen traditionally the military working hand in hand. We've seen police officers working hand in hand with cartel members. I saw the cartel's coercion of government institutions, intimidation of law enforcement, and their brutal enforcement of control over entire communities.
By 2024, investigators believe the state had quietly become a distribution hub for much of the East Coast. Intelligence assessments suggested partnerships between Mexican trafficking networks, including groups linked to the Sinaloa cartel, and Chinese chemical suppliers and underground banking organization. Precursors flowed in, finished narcotics flowed out. Cash moved back overseas through layered financial systems designed to avoid detection. The first public arrest came in Duluth, Georgia, when ICE and HSI agents detained Haming Chen, a 48-year-old courier they had monitored for nearly 10 months. Surveillance logs later referenced in court filings showed repeated late-night drives along Interstate 85, structured cash drop-offs under federal reporting thresholds, and meetings with brokers tied to logistics firms. Officials were careful to clarify that the case was not an immigration sweep. It was a narcotics and financial investigation. Mingchen was not a street dealer. He was a connector, moving millions in drug proceeds between distributors in Georgia and laundering channels with ties to East Asia. That arrest unlocked a much larger operation. Search warrants led agents into neighborhoods known for manicured lawns and high property values. Johns Creek, Alpharetta, Gwinnett County. Behind the doors of nearly million-dollar homes, agents found full-scale drug production sites. Living rooms had been stripped to concrete floors with steel tables bolted down. Bedrooms were converted into chemical drying rooms. Attics housed ventilation systems, running day and night to mask odors and regulate temperatures. One property alone contained enough raw fentanyl to produce millions of potentially lethal doses. Officials described the houses as industrial labs hidden in plain sight. Precursors arrived through cargo routes connected to Hartsfield-Jackson Atlanta International Airport. Once cleared, they were transported to suburban garages where cooks could operate for months without drawing suspicion. Neighbors later told investigators they heard a constant mechanical hum, assuming it was air conditioning equipment. In reality, it was industrial mixing and chemical processing equipment operating continuously.
Today exemplifies our working relationship, our resolve to go out there and touch bad guys anywhere. There's no more defeating us, again, by our jurisdictional boundaries. We're here to work together.
By early September 2024, federal command concluded the network was too expansive to dismantle piecemeal. At 3:14 a.m. on September 18th, a coordinated operation began. ICE, HSI, DEA, FBI, ATF, the Georgia Bureau of Investigation, and local task forces launched what officials later called the largest synchronized enforcement action in Georgia's history. Nearly 140 locations were targeted across the state, including production labs, stash houses, brokerage offices, and financial financial fronts. In Gwinnett County, tactical teams moved into residential streets before dawn. In Monroe and Augusta, agents breached fortified stash houses reinforced with steel barriers. On highways near state lines, ICE units intercepted convoys attempting to move drugs and currency out of Georgia. By the end of the week-long surge, authorities reported more than 120 arrests. Over 12 tons of narcotics were seized, along with more than 1 million counterfeit pills designed to mimic prescription medications. Hundreds of firearms were recovered. Approximately $30 million in cash and assets were confiscated. But even those numbers told only part of the story. Investigators soon realized the true engine of the network was financial. In Norcross, agents raided a trucking company that rarely transported legitimate freight. Instead, sealed containers carried bundled cash collected from stash houses throughout metro Atlanta. $14 million was discovered hidden in boxes labeled as office supplies. Nail salons, spas, and entertainment venues across Duluth, Chamblee, and Midtown Atlanta were flagged for reporting revenues far exceeding normal customer volume. Money flowed through underground banking channels and reappeared in mirrored transactions overseas. Homeland Security estimated the network had laundered approximately $410 million over 2 years through shell companies registered in multiple states and foreign jurisdictions. Some corporate filings included approvals and notarizations now under criminal review, though officials have withheld names due to ongoing proceedings. Hartsfield-Jackson Airport emerged as a critical node. With thousands of cargo pallets moving daily, traffickers exploited sheer volume, staffing limitations, and timing gaps. Atlanta's extensive international flight network made it ideal for outbound shipments as well. Intelligence notes indicated that meth produced or consolidated in Georgia could sell for exponentially higher prices in parts of Australia and East Asia. Couriers were reportedly paid six-figure sums per trip. Some were intercepted before they fully understood the scale of the operation they were supporting. From an enforcement perspective, the case marked a shift in how synthetic drug networks operate. This was not a traditional smuggling ring dependent on a single border crossing or street-level distribution crew. It functioned as a multinational supply chain integrating chemical sourcing, domestic production, financial laundering, and global redistribution. Complexity became camouflage. Legitimate business filings masked shell corporations. Residential neighborhoods concealed production facilities. High-volume cargo traffic provided cover for precursor imports. The implications extend beyond Georgia. Federal officials acknowledge that similar structures may exist elsewhere, embedded in regions with robust transportation infrastructure and high trade volume. The case forced agencies to re-examine inspection protocols, financial reporting thresholds, and interagency coordination models. It also highlighted vulnerabilities in how global commerce intersects with criminal enterprise. As court proceedings move forward, many details remain sealed. Prosecutors have indicated that additional arrests are possible, and financial investigations are ongoing. The man in the suburban parking lot was never the true architect of the network. He was one component in a system designed to operate quietly, efficiently, and profitably across continents. This case is not only about drugs or money, it is about how modern criminal networks adapt to globalization, leveraging legitimate infrastructure to conceal illicit activity. It is about how suburban stability can coexist with hidden industrial-scale crime. And it raises a question communities across the country must confront. If a $400 million operation could embed itself in plain sight for years, what other networks are operating quietly beneath the surface of ordinary life?